Welcome to the Compassionate Leader Circle podcast, where we explore what it truly means to lead with love. In a world that's moving faster than ever, this is your space to slow down, reconnect with your purpose, and hear about the kind of leadership that transforms lives and how it can do the same for yours too. Your hosts are me, Daryl Brown, Sarah Feely, and CLC founder Laurel Donnellan. If you're ready to grow, question, and to lead with courage and compassion, you're in the right place.
I have an incredible guest today. I'm very happy to introduce her in a minute, but I want to start this podcast with our principle and practice in the Donnellan leadership method about love. So the principle is love, and we define love as affection, kindness, and common interests so that we can apply it to academics and to all our relationships, not necessarily romantic love. And the practice is to honor all our relationships. And I have had the privilege of being part of Lakota ceremonies in the past that I've been invited to. And I really learned from those people about being connected to all of our relations and the relationship we have not only with people, but with plants and with animals and with insects and with water and with rocks, with the universe. So I think as leaders, we need to connect to ourselves and to all our relationships. And with that, I'm going to introduce the CEO of Native Forward, Angelique Albert. I met her at South by Southwest, and we had an amazing lunch, and I consider her a dear friend, even though we haven't spent a lot of time together. So welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thank you, Laurel. Thank you for having me. And I feel the same. I mean, some people you just connect with, and it's nice that you are giving us a little space to kind of share and build our relationship.
Well, I learned about you by going to your presentation, and I believe it was the only one at the education conference that was delivered by a Native American, if I'm not wrong. And it's important that for me that all these big conferences represent all people. And then I learned about you and your remarkable history and your family's history and the remarkable and long history of Native Forward. But I'd like to start with you. I'd like to start with just hearing a little bit about you and your family and how you grew up, and then we'll talk about Native Forward.
Sure. So I grew up on the Flathead Indian Reservation in Northwest Montana. What you should know about the Flathead area, it's just gorgeous. We're very rich in natural resources. Our tribe cares very much about, like you said, our animals, our, plants, and you get a sense of that when you're on our reservation, that there's a strong commitment to that. And I also think we are doing quite well as a tribal government with just our infrastructure, our economic development. So I grew up with a strong sense of commitment to my tribe and my people. And I grew up here, raised my 3 boys here. I started my educational journey at Salish Kootenai College and went on to get my master's degree from Gonzaga. But I grew up with my mother, who is Salish and Kootenai and Chippewa Cree, and with my father, who is French and Norwegian. Grew up close to my culture and my cultural values. Also grew up with a strong sense of community and commitment to that community. So in my early years, I professionally was working with our tribal legal department. I worked with as a CASA worker, helping children, and then went on to work in the criminal justice system for a moment. It was all in service to community, and then went on to work in philanthropy outside of my reservation, came back to serve the community and work at Salish Kootenai College. So I've kind of been all over the place. For me personally, it was that journey that took me away from the reservation, where I learned my true calling and wanting to serve in the nonprofit field. When I was working in Southeast Texas, I was working for a foundation in philanthropy and thought, this is going to be so much fun, just giving away all this money. And every time I would read a grant application, I just found myself longing to be the one doing the work. And so that's kind of what led me into the nonprofit space. I do still think it's fun to give away money. So I still get to do that by supporting our scholars. But for me, just finding my life calling by first wanting to serve community and strengthen our community internally. But then that led me to a path of wanting to help all of our tribal communities and through the lens of creating opportunities and opportunity through education. And when you ask about my history and that with education, it's very personal. You know, when I feel like I'm the first generation that truly had the privilege of having a quality education, both with primary and secondary as well as post-secondary, I feel like I'm the first generation to have that. And so I see how it's transformed my life, and I want to make sure other Native people across this country have that same opportunity. For my parents and grandparents, well, mostly my grandparents and those generations, they were really subjected to federal Indian laws that required them to attend institutions. They were labeled as educational institutions, but they did not get access to quality education at the boarding schools. And so that's a part of my history, is just seeing what my grandparents, but also my community members who are living today, what they were subjected to, and they really didn't have access to higher education. So that's part of what shaped me and my passion for wanting to provide education to Native people.
And I appreciated in your presentation that you talked about your grandfather, I believe, who was at one of those, quote, schools. Maybe they should have been called a prison. Tell us a little bit about that story, because I think some of us see that on TV, but your family's lived it. So I'd like to, honor him and honor that story.
Sure. So my grandfather was taken away from his parents by force at the age of 5, and he was forced to go to a Catholic boarding school, and he kept running away from that school many times, and they would catch him and take him back. And he, like many, were subjected to abuse of all kinds, so, and many of those children also experienced death. And so that's a part of the story. My grandfather ended up running away and catching a train that eventually took him out of state. So, and I believe that was at the age of 10 or 11. And so he lived on his own as a child until he was old enough to not be taken back to that boarding school and be subjected to that abuse. But as a consequence, the language in my family was, and some of those cultural practices were broken. And I had to go back and learn my language at Salish Kootenai College and learn my cultural ways from other community members. So that is kind of what he went through. And it's interesting, in my family, we're matriarchal, and it's like my grandmothers also went through this. And I have a lot of women in my family, but we don't share the stories as women. So it's like I know more about my grandfather's story than I do my grandmothers and aunties, and I don't know as much of their story. And I questioned that one day. I'm like, why? Why not? But then as a Native woman, I also realized that I don't share my story, because who wants to talk about all the hard things and the things that are unpleasant? But for some reason, we share our stories of our men. So I do know more about my grandfather's story and what he went through, but also acknowledge that our women go through that and more as well.
around the corner here, we're going to have our 250th birthday as a country. Your people's history is much longer than that. And I just want to say I'm sorry. I want to say I'm sorry for that part of our history. It really brings tears to my eyes. And it's remarkable to me that it wasn't that long ago, really. You know, it's not ancient history, these boarding schools. It was not too long ago. And I think that brings us to Native Forward. And the mission of Native Forward is also very important in healing and supporting Native people. And it's also a long history. You're 50 years old, isn't that right?
We are. We're going into our 56th year. So in October, we'll be 56 years old.
Oh, 56.
And
yeah.
Yeah, just to your point, as we're impacted by federal Indian law, we are citizens of nations within a nation. So it's important that our communities, your community, my community, our communities understand that fact, because we will always be impacted by the laws that are created in this country. And so as Native people, it's important for us to be aware of those things. And when we were started as an organization, we were started at the end of the termination era. So that's a federal Indian period, federal Indian law period, where there was attempts to terminate the nations, the tribal nations across this country. And it was the beginning of the self-determination era. And that is where the federal government acknowledged that, yes, we, as tribal citizens, we should have a say over our own people and to be able to govern ourselves. And so at the beginning of that, my predecessors had the foresight to say education is at the top of that. And we need people educated in law. We need people educated in education, because we need to fight for sovereignty rights. We need to retain our treaty rights. We need to have Native people educating Native people. And so they set a vision for us to be able to educate the Native people across this country and educate them at a level where they can have voice and representation in spaces that matter. So we have always encouraged our Native scholars to get the highest level degree possible. So whether that's a master's degree, PhD, your Juris Doctorate, whatever that is, we help support Native scholars to get that higher education and provide scholarships to them so that they can have access to higher education and get any degree they see fit, so that we as Native people have representation in all of those spaces. So that's the work we've been doing for the past 56 years. And, I feel like the needle is moving slowly. But also want to acknowledge that we have provided degrees to over 22,000 Native scholars who are doing fabulous things across this country. Like I said, lawyers fighting for sovereignty rights. When we started this, I think we had 38 Native lawyers in the country, and now Native Forward has supported over 2,000 tribal lawyers across the country, and we have provided over 2,200 PhDs. So we are very proud of that, and we are in every different industry, and we support students to go to any accredited institution in any of the 50 states, any degree field that they're interested in. So we are all about just getting them that degree, helping them persist. So we primarily focus on scholarships, but we do have wraparound services and some other tools that help them persist to get to those other degrees. So that's what we focus on.
And the impact, I'm sure, is far reaching, because you're changing not only them, the scholars, but their families and generations, right? And generational wealth, which is an important thing to address as well for all people who are marginalized in this country. I'm very curious about what it looks like on the ground for applications and how you decide who gets the scholarships, because I understand there is a gap between funding and how many people are interested in this.
Yes, we have a pretty massive need, and we've seen an increase in the past year, a little over a year, with the changes in policies at a federal level. We have seen a massive increase in the number of students who are applying to Native Forward. So we've had 12,000 applicants this year. And typically we don't get that many. We typically get, well, last year I think we had just over 7,000, which was also an increase. So we're at 12,000 this year, and we're only able to fund 2,000. So that leaves a pretty massive gap for us. We have students apply, we help them with the application process, and then we have a scoring rubric, and we score them not only on academic achievement, but also on their participation in community. So we consider, instead of just their participation in extracurricular type activities that you would see on a normal application, we give credit to students who participate in supporting elders in their community or work with their cultural programs. So we do give points for that. And it is pretty competitive. And what we're seeing right now is that the students are all, they score very high. And oftentimes it comes down to the letters of recommendation. And if that person knows them well, and sometimes the scoring rubric is tipped just on that one thing alone, because we're seeing very high scores for most of the students. But there is a big need when we have 12,000 scholars and only fund 2,000 of them. So there is a pretty massive unmet need that we have.
What do you attribute the big, so you went from 7,000 to 12,000 and 7,000, I mean, is it just more people know about you? Is it funding
No.
cuts in other places?
It is funding cuts in other places. So we're seeing that institutional aid that typically went through various funding streams through the federal government, so, and they consider them DEI. So let's say National Science Foundation funding that students would get, but it would be institutional aid. It would go through the institutions. Those things are getting cut. And even though we as Native people are not considered DEI, we are citizens of nations, so we don't technically fit in that category. A lot of our students were getting funding through those streams. So the funding through those streams are getting cut. The DEI support services on campuses are getting cut. And so we're seeing an increase in not only the applications for funding, but also additional supports requested through our support team. So requests for tutors, requests for mentoring, and just those things that they need to persist.
Seems like our country and our government couldn't invest better than in our Native people and our Native young people. As far, I mean, there's such a return on investment to invest in people that want to do well and that have done well in high school. And anyway, it's heartbreaking. But we'll move over to something more positive. So you have 2,000 people that you can help this year. And how does your applications work? Like, when do people apply, and when are they notified? How does that work?
Yes, we open them in January. We have two funding cycles. One's in January. It opens in January and it closes in June. And then we have a mid-year cycle as well for students who may be off cycle or miss the first opportunity. Yeah, so we leave it open for quite a while. We have many funding streams in that first go around. We have over 40 different programs that we fund. From some are specific to STEM, some are specific to business, and some are just open to everybody. We award, then we close down and we do the review cycle and then get them awarded so that they can start in the fall.
You must, how big is your staff that processes 12,000 applications? How do you do that?
Oh my goodness. This year we tried some AI. That didn't work. So we had to go back to the basics, and we are thankful for our partners. We have various corporate partners who help. We have the 22,000 alumni. They volunteer to be readers. You and your constituent base, they can volunteer to be readers.
Okay, that's good. That's
so
something, that's a good ask. If people want to support this cause, that's a good way to volunteer, right?
Yes, we have a little training video that people can watch so they understand how the scoring rubric works. And then they just go through, read the applications, score it, and then it gets double scored and then aggregated. And then we elevate those that align to the different types of funding streams. And then it is a heavy lift. We typically work late hours during those cycles
I bet.
and and then make it up on the back end. But it's such a joy reading the applications, hearing the stories and the lives that are transformed, and you see it in Indian country when you look at some of our students who have gone on to do amazing things, like the previous Secretary of Interior, Deb Haaland. We have the director of the Smithsonian's National Museum of the American Indians, and they're just people out there doing amazing things. And the fact that we could just be a small part of their journey, it feels great.
It's funny you mentioned that you tried AI and it didn't work. I think a lot of us are doing that right now. Like we have this big promise of AI, but it might be a little too early. Sometimes I'm trying AI and I'm like, I think I just wasted the whole day using AI where it would have taken me an hour to do something myself. But we're in the wild, wild west of AI right now. When you think about the future of Native Forward, what is your vision for this organization?
Well, I think the vision is very clear. We want to fund every Native scholar who has the desire to pursue a higher education to be able to do that. And we want to do that by providing scholarships and those support services to do that. When I think about where we are in this country, I'm concerned, honestly. I'm concerned about natives in higher education because when you look at the data since 2013, there's been a decline in native college going attendance by 45%. What is the reason? Why? This is massive. These numbers are astronomical. So we were looking at 197,000 native scholars in the country, and that was in 2013. Now there are 107,000. So, when we look and do research on why that's happening, affordability is the number one thing. We have an average unmet need last year of 26,000, and we know our students make about 35,000 a year for their income. So we know that our students have food insecurities, housing insecurity, and so I think that is a part of the story. And I think that there's part of the story that we still aren't fully aware of. So when I think of the vision for our future, I want to make sure that every Native scholar has the opportunity, every one of those 107,000. I don't want to turn away any of them. I don't want to turn away the 10,000 that are applying through us right now. There is that goal. But when you look at philanthropy, and philanthropy is giving less than 0.5% of funding to Indian country, and we're a smaller portion, a smaller subset of that. There's such a small part of the philanthropic dollars going in to support our Native people. So my vision for the future is to, with the Mackenzie Scott gift that we recently received, 100% of that is going to go into the hands of students. We've built our infrastructure. We're doing well. We're able to scale in a way where we're giving out an additional 2 million annually. And then we are taking 40 million of that, and we've started an endowment, and we want to grow that to 100 million so that we can increase. At the same time, we're addressing the immediate needs of our students that want to go to college. We're also growing for our grandchildren's grandchildren. And as as someone who has had experience in Indian country, it's important for us to ensure the next 7 generations also have the same opportunities or more than what we have. So building on that future is important to us, and just making sure that we can get more dollars into the hands of students. But really, I want to be able to fund every Native scholar.
Why did Miss Scott decide to give you that endowment? What was her personal reason for that? Because maybe that will help all of us understand the need and the reward of endowing you.
The gift was given as an unrestricted gift. which is the beauty of it. And it is our second gift that we've received from her. The first gift, we invested in our own infrastructure as well as expanding scholarships. And so this one, we felt like we had the capacity to invest all of that directly into our students. And why did she give to us? When you look back, we were part of that first pool that she gave to, the first 116 people or organizations that she gave to. And she said, she made reference to a glass-winged butterfly, and that we create change by carrying the weight of 40 times our weight, and called us change makers. And so, although I haven't had the opportunity to speak to her directly, I do look at kind of her essays and kind of what she has said, and it's finding organizations that she believes in their leadership and believes in the change that they are making and can make in the future. So she made references to those things, and clearly very proud of that. Also thankful that she believed in our leadership enough to invest in a way that is unrestricted. So we got to make those decisions. And I think that's something that's important to say, is that as Native people, we're close to our own communities. So we know how to problem solve in our communities. We're closest to the problem. We're closest to the answers. And so to believe in us enough to say, okay, you know what's best, you make those investments. So we are still using the first gift, which was 20 million, and we're utilizing that on strategy and growth and scholarships. And then this new funding is going to be 100% for the students. So I can't say exactly why she gave to us, but I'm reading between the lines. So yeah. And am very thankful for the unrestricted funds and for us to be able to decide what is best for us.
The fact that you've been around for 56 years is important for people in philanthropy to know, because they want to give to something that has a solid foundation and a bright future. I think, when we help educate people, especially Native American people who often go back to their communities and serve in their communities, we lift everyone up. We lift everyone up. And if you love this country, you need to love our Native Americans, because they were here before all of us came and have been taking care of this beautiful country and this beautiful land for a lot longer than many of us. So I'm very curious about maybe a couple of other stories of people that have gone through this program and have gone. It could be, we have a couple of examples of people that are well known, but maybe there's lesser known people that have gone back and done service in their communities that you'd like to talk about.
Oh my goodness, yes. So we have Rose Bear Don't Walk. She's a young lady who started as, I can't remember what her undergrad started in, but she ended up going to the University of Montana. She went on to take traditional plant medicines and our traditional ecological knowledge and apply it to today. And she has integrated that into her teachings, is kind of revitalizing those in our tribal communities, not just here in Montana, but nationally, and sharing that information. Dr. Henrietta Mann, she is someone who pursued her education a little bit later in life, and she is an educator. She got her degree, and she ended up being a main administrator at the University of Montana, Montana State University, but she also went on to provide teachings at some of the Ivy Leagues across the country. And then she also started a tribal college. And that's a trend that we're seeing. A lot of leaders in tribal colleges, whether that's at a president level or some of the other executive positions, that a lot of our scholars have gone on to be in the education space and to run tribal colleges. So that's something that we're proud of. Also, when I think of a PhD student, his name is Stephen. And he did his PhD research on missing and murdered Indigenous women and is now transitioning from education to being able to use that and create a space where he can help, which is kind of an epidemic in this country where our young women are going missing and murdered.
Originally, you talked about women not necessarily having, even though you're matriarchal in your tribe, sometimes we forget the women's stories. So the fact that he is taking his education and telling those stories, no matter how horrific they are, is, I think, really important work.
With the tribal ecological knowledge and integrating that and sharing that with the world, I think it's a powerful thing because where we are in this country, as we look, I think that we as Native people, as the original scientists of this country and original stewards of this land, I think we have a level of knowledge and expertise that we can contribute to the world. So as we educate people in these STEM fields and we're able to incorporate our own traditional teachings and share that out with the world, I think that it's going to help heal our community. And I think it's timely that we share our knowledge with others and integrate that into mainstream universities and the work that we do. So I do appreciate the work of our people who are focused on tribal ecological knowledge, any of those environmental fields where I feel we as tribal people shine.
Well, you honor Mother Earth, right? So it's more than just the science, more than the head. It's very embodied in Native people that the Earth is important. And as we face global change and global climate change, it's going to be great to have those minds and hearts on that problem. It's another big problem we need to solve for sure. Any other examples of people that have been scholars and have done good work with their scholarship that you want to share?
Sure. Eldred Lasansi is someone that comes to mind. He is a student who, in his life, he was walking through a museum one day and saw stolen items from his tribe. And so he went back to school, pursued his law degree, and now is working to repatriate items from various places back to his own tribal community and others' tribal communities. So such a powerful story. He was our student of the year last year, and students like him and others are just doing work that is so powerful. Proud of the work that he's doing, as well as all of our other scholars.
It must be so satisfying for him to be so involved deeply with his history and then healing his history. It's amazing.
Yeah, I think that's something that is a cultural value to give back to our tribal communities and to make sure that we are making our communities stronger. I think that's something that is powerful about Native Forward. It's not about the individual Native person getting an education. It's really about us as tribal people getting an education to make our tribal communities stronger and to make our tribal communities prosper. So he is just a shining example of that.
It's been my experience that you put communities ahead of the individual, which is very different in America, but very needed. What else do you want people to know about your organization and the future of it?
Native Forward, we're growing, and we have had phenomenal growth in the past 9 years in revenue, in the way that we serve students, the number of students we've served, and I'm pretty proud of that. But we're also working to increase those support services to our students. We just implemented a new program for mentoring and connecting those 22,000 Native alumni that we have that are already professionals in the field. We're having them mentor our students, but also making sure that we have wraparound services for those students and increasing those students' services so that they can persist.
You mentioned earlier that sometimes students are challenged by rising costs of having housing and food insecurity. I'm imagining they also have a lot of, struggles like most students do, just making school work, right? Like helping them support their mental health and managing all this change in the world and at school. So do your wraparound services include therapy or things like that?
We don't have therapy, but we do connect with people. We do connect them to resources on campuses.
Yeah.
We've had to increase the number of staff that we have, and we make sure that they are culturally competent staff who understand working in Indian country. But what they do is we do so many connections a year. So we email them, we text them, and connect with them throughout the year. So we have designated staff for each student. And that's something that we've just integrated over the past 5 years. And then additionally, when you speak about those resources, those housing insecurities and things that they have, we've also implemented a new scholarship program. Well, it's a emergency kind of funding stream that we have to help them if they have housing insecurity and they need rent for the month or they need food. So we do have funding available for that too. And we do have various donors who like contributing to that, because we know that's a part of persistence, is just kind of keeping them in when things get a little bit rough. The other thing I'll say is that we do survey our students from time to time and listen to what they say their needs are instead of us just making those assumptions. And sometimes it is those core basic needs that keep them in there, but also we're learning that they're asking for funding for certifications, professional certifications. They want to be able to get their CPA, but they didn't realize that it's cost prohibitive and that there are many different tests they have to take and they all cost. And so we're addressing needs like that. So we continue to listen to our students and see what their needs are and make sure that we're addressing those needs and kind of meeting them where they are. We're also excited about a new partnership that hasn't been announced yet, but we're trying to respond to the need for more trades funding. So that's something that will also be coming up. So just really, it's important for us to listen to our students and what their needs are and making sure that we're stepping up to those needs.
As we wrap up here, Angelique, what is one life lesson you'd like to share with our listeners today?
You had asked me about my grandparents and that, and it really has to do with that, that we all don't have equal access to higher education, and I think that's important for people to know. I learned from my son and my father. It's interesting how our children can sometimes be our teachers. He said, really, like, his favorite song was love life, and to love your life and to love it fully and embrace it fully. I do feel like that's kind of a consistent message when I talk to you, is that love, like you said at the beginning of the programming, love your life, love all of it, even the hard times, because the hard times teach us things. And even though we can go through trauma, we can go through loss, I think that there is always something that we gain from that, no matter how hard it is. And if we integrate that into our being, then I think that we can use that as skills. And for example, if we go through a loss, I think it does teach us to be more compassionate when people do go through those type of things. So that's going to be my life lesson, is just to love all of you and all of your life experiences, and to learn how to integrate them instead of being impacted by them, but to embrace them and to make them a part of you, because I know that's something that took me a while to learn how to do. So that would be my life lesson.
That's beautiful. I'm going to take that with me for sure. I'm already taking it into my heart. And what is a leadership lesson you'd like to share?
I would say authenticity is key. Authenticity, specifically when it comes to relationship building. I think that that's probably the single most effective tool that has helped me to get where I am. When I was younger, I think I tried to fit in I tried to change who I was to fit in so that I could be in those really cool spaces and make a bigger impact. And so I felt like I had to change who I was. I was my authentic self with my family, my friends, my tribal community. And the irony is that I elevated professionally through my friends, my tribal community, my family. I elevated because of that authenticity. So I've integrated that across all things. And I find that whether I'm with donors, corporate partners, my phenomenal team who are just killing it, whether it's philanthropy, when you bring your authentic self, it allows others to be their authentic self. And I think that people see that and they feel that. And I think that's key. And now people invite me into those spaces, and they invite me not because I fit in. They invite me because I'm different, I'm unique, because I don't fit in. And so I find that my voice is unique in that space. And so I think the authenticity is one of the leadership skills that just I always try to ground myself in. Let's just be authentically yourself, because if you try to be anything else, people feel that.
Beautifully said. And I think that's why we both like each other, and why you're in my space today is it was just always easy and authentic and deep from the moment we started our friendship and this conversation. And how do people find out more about how they can help and donate to Native Forward? Where do we go for that?
At nativeforward.org. And I will just let your readers know they can also email us directly. We have direct links on our website where they can email us if they want to have a partnership, if they want to participate and be a reader, a volunteer, if they would like to join us in building this endowment for the next 7 generations. So there's all the ways to connect right on our website. So nativeforward.org.
Thank you so much for your time today. It's been lovely being with you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Compassionate Leaders Circle podcast. It means so much to have you here with us today. Every episode is an invitation to grow together, and we hope today's insights stay with you long after this conversation ends. Be sure to keep an eye out for our next episode. We've got more inspiring stories and practical lessons on the way. Learn more about our community of change makers at compassionateleaderscircle.com.
Are you ready to start leading yourself and others with more clarity and heart? Passionate Leaders Circle Toolkit gives you access to free and low-cost assessments, learning exercises, and books steeped in love and purpose to help you become a more resilient and effective leader. And here's the best part. Research shows that leaders who lead with compassion actually see higher engagement, stronger retention, and increased revenue. Visit CompassionateLeadersCircle.com to explore the toolkit, our most recently published book, The Compassionate Leader's Companion, and start transforming your ability to lead others and yourself today.